Bakert with Jazz Guitar Today, and we're sitting with Jason Lollar, guitar pickup wizard extraordinaire. Just one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit was just addressing the design criteria when you're building pickups for, say, a jazz tone versus a rock or blues tone. Is there any considerations there at all, or
Yeah,
are they melding together, or how is that all
they
going?
they meld together. What we deal with is timbre or frequency response. Our second level is attack, decay, sustain, the dynamics, and the tonality. You know, you see a hollow body. Everybody always says, "Oh, that's a jazz guitar," but actually, it's the guy or person playing the guitar that makes it sound like jazz, not the guitar. A lot of the tonality and the attack crosses over for everybody. They use similar aspects, but it's how they apply it. You might have some jazz players might want a smoother attack with a fuller treble. So generally that makes you have to make the pickup a little bit hotter to get more bass into it to give it a smoother bottom end. And so they're after that kind of a real smoother, darker tone. And then there's other guys that want something more percussive and cleaner so that you can hear the voicings of the inversions real easily, so that really are pronounced, the beating of between the intervals. So it just depends on the guy's style and what they're after to do with it. The same thing goes with anybody if they're playing heavy metal or something, you know. They might want to really drive the amp hard, or the amp is able to drive hard and they want a cleaner tone out of the guitar to get a more detailed, distorted sound.
Do you find it more challenging between, say, the full body arch top and the thin lines and the solid bodies? Is there anything that becomes a challenge between those three when you're looking for that kind of articulation?
Yeah, they all have a slightly different sound. The attack and decay is quite different on a thin line with a block in it compared to a fully hollow body. And one of the challenges is if you get a pickup that throws too much bass into the amp, when it comes out of the amp, it can hit the guitar and make the low end feed back too easily. Big woo kind of a sound out of it that you don't want. There's a balance there about how much and what frequencies you can put out and get a usable sound that's not, you know, when you turn the amp up a bit, it doesn't just start howling at you.
You touched on something for a second there about, you know, it's not the guitar, it's the player.
Yeah.
You know, and the technique and all of that. And when people ask me about pickups, you know, because they say, well, this pickup, that, but chimed in on that and saying, you know, it's all about your technique and the way that your guitar responds to the way that you play to get the sound that you're hearing in your head. An interesting phenomenon in the magazine, Jazz Guitar Today, is about paying homage to what's gone down in the past. But we're also talking about the guys that are playing today, the young guys that are playing Tellys and Strats and 335s and what have you, and getting great sounds and great tones. And as soon as you add drums to the stage, you know, things change an awful lot.
You lose a lot of the real fine detail of the sound of the guitar.
Right. And, you know, like tonight I'm going to see Larry Carlton. And I'm going to see him in a little 40-seat room in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a pretty cool ticket. But the point I'm making is that for many people, he's a jazz player, even though he's made his living playing all kinds of different things. But he certainly has played a lot of jazz. And, I mean, you know, can you speak to the advent of overdrive and how you design pickups when you know that somebody's going to be using a more of an overdriven tone?
It can go either way. You can use a really hot pickup to make the amp push more, or it can use a pickup with less output and make the amp do the work instead of the pickup. There's some differences there, especially in the amount of attack. You know, when you get a really hot pickup, it makes it sound like the attack is more squashed because there's just so much volume coming out of it as soon as you hit it. Whereas with a lower output pickup, you can really dig into the string and hit it, and it makes it sound punchier.
I know you guys are really receptive to people coming to you with custom needs, artist relations, and things of that nature. I know you've worked with a lot of artists and manufacturers over the years. You and I, actually, this pickup right here was developed. It's kind of a modified Imperial for one of the companies that I used to work for. How do you approach collaborating with an artist on on pickups or a manufacturer?
Yeah, if it's a standard pickup, I like to get their take on one of our models. It would be the same. It's a Strat pickup. I would send them a particular wine that we do. They can use that and try it and then comment on that and give me an idea of which way they want to go from there. And then we can make changes. Sometimes it takes a few tries at it to nail it for them. Then there's people like Charlie Hunter who uses a split pickup where the top 4 strings run through one pickup and the bottom 3 run through another, and he uses different amplifiers. So he plays bass lines at the same time as he's doing chording, kind of like playing a piano, sort of, it sounds like. And so something like that has to be made specifically for him, and I have to get dimensions for the string spacing, and we build a prototype. They play it, they use it, they comment on it. Sometimes we'll have to build another one to get it closer to what they wanted. Sometimes it takes a number of reiterations to do something like that. It can be a long, kind of expensive process to really design something new from scratch.
Is it fun for you?
Oh yeah, I like
think
doing
that'd
that.
be creative.
Yeah, that's the fun part. And I've done it enough that it's gotten pretty good at it. We have the tool to do it where I used to have to cut all those parts out by hand, like on a table saw and a router. Now we have like a laser cutter that will just take the drawing and cut it out for me. It's a little easier to do anymore.
I know the process that we went through. Well, I guess I can say it when I was with Eastman to get that pickup where I wanted it. It was fun for me. It turned out to be exactly what we were looking for. It took a few to get it where we wanted it, and it was great working with you on that.
Yeah, we all of us enjoyed doing that kind of
thing.
It's
just a lot of fun to have it in your mind and then have it actually turn out and be good.
Amazing.
I love it when it works out.
You would have thought.
There is a story or a legend, a myth, call it what you like, a reality, that Jason Lollar sits at a little desk every night and winds all these pickups himself.
Oh, you're good. No, I used to.
My best friend I think in the industry, Evan Scott,
Yeah.
said, ask Jason about that, because the process, as I know, is that each pickup, I'm going to let you speak to that while maybe at one point in time in your life you sat and wound every pickup yourself, what is your process for manufacture? And can you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, a long time ago, I had a choice to either just continue doing everything on my own and just raise the prices way up, or bring on other people to help do the work. That's what I decided to do. Over the years, I've trained a number of people to take the building from scratch. I've developed most of the designs that we make on my own, and more in the last few years, I've been bringing in people that work for us to help design. They just have to learn the technique of the actual manipulation of everything. And so we have a formula. If we're making a Jazz Master pickup, it uses a certain type of magnet, a certain size magnet. There are certain specifications, the height of the coil, everything. They have to keep track of all that stuff. And so that's really one of the important things is keeping track of, because they're building Strat pickups like blondes and black faces and specials, and they all use a different magnet, all use different wires. So that's a really important part of it. And we have ways to test that they put it together right when it's all fully assembled. So there's a lot of testing involved through every step. It takes a lot of hand skill to get the solder joints perfect and the wire perfectly tensioned. And so the manufacturing boils down to, we have 6 or 7 or 8 people winding. They all know 5 or 6 different types of pickups that they can make. A few of them can make all of the pickups that we make. They make the pickup from scratch, from the very first part of the deal all the way through the end. So it's one person in control of a batch of Stratocaster pickups. That way, every step is overlooked by the same person, so the consistency of the product is consistent as you can get it, instead of having somebody wind the coil and somebody else soldering the lead wires and somebody else taping it and somebody else potting it. I like the fact that they do it all from start to finish.
it's still artisan, you know. It
Yeah.
seems to be very artisan, and that
It is, but it's also it's somewhat production, you know, because we build stuff in like a batch of 20 or 30 at a time, and that way you can make sure it's all more consistent. You can pick out anything that's inconsistent very easily.
I know that because of my experience with your company. We bought a lot of pickups, and they were incredibly consistent one to the next. And knowing that they're built in batches the way that they are, even from batch to batch, they were incredibly consistent. So that's a testament to the way that you train your people and you know, and their fastidiousness, if you will, of keeping things where they're supposed to be. It's pretty remarkable. I've got a question for you. Now I'm on the internet a lot because the magazine, that's kind of what we do. And people are always asking the question, you know, I've got a Telly, I've got a Strat, I've got a Les Paul, I'm not happy with my pickups, I want something else. And then you get these long threads that go on for hours about, you know, well, try this one, try that one, try this one.
Yes, I've seen them.
Yeah. Well, you know, here's the deal. Here's the problem for the average guy with the average budget. And maybe a wife who says, honey, how much was that?
Yeah.
The guy that can buy all the pickups in the world and try them and doesn't like them, you know, puts them in a box and, you know, tries the next one. The problem for most guys and girls is they can't afford that.
Right.
Is there a way to have a kind of a reliable predictor to give people an idea? Like, for example, let me give you an example. I know that if I'm playing an arch-top guitar, full-bodied floating pickup guitar, if the stage volume gets above 85 dB, I'm going to have problems.
Right.
I mean, that's an example. I know that a thin line guitar, if I'm going to be playing up over 100 dB, I'm going to have problems. That's an example, you know, for the most part, depending on, you know, where the monitors are, where my amps are, and all that kind of thing.
Right. And the room.
And the room and all the acoustics and all of that. But is there a way to, I mean, I know that you've got great descriptors. This one sounds like a this one sounds like a that, this one sounds like a this. What advice would you give to somebody, or they know that they're only going to be able to try this like one time to get the next pickup? I mean, should they call in and talk to Jimmy or Bob or somebody? I mean, what's
Well, we do that a lot. That's how we've done it for years, and we've gotten really good at talking to people about what they're trying to get. You know, there's no standard words to describe some of the tones, so there's like, you know, funny words that people say, like squanky. I want it to be squanky. You know, what's that mean? Well, you know, you have to listen to it for a while, and sometimes what they think they're asking for, what they think they want, isn't really what they're portraying to you. It can be a kind of a puzzle-solving thing to talk to somebody and figure out what exactly is going to work for them. But we've gotten really good at that. That's one way. And the other thing is we work with enough guitar makers that if you live in a pretty big town, you should be able to go to a music store and try some of our pickups that are installed OEM into different manufacturers.
Actually, that's pretty good advice right there.
Yeah.
Between calling your guys and explaining Swanky to them,
right,
and going to a store and getting all that done. I know that lately I've seen an awful lot of the whole pickup thing, and of course, again, we get back to the beginning of our discussion about technique, and you know that pickup may work for that guy because of his technique, but it's not going to work for you and your amp and your technique and the way that you play.
That's the biggest thing, is that when you hand it to the individual, you can't tell how they attack the string or pull the tone out of the guitar or not. They can tell you what tones they want, but hand them the guitar and they get a whole different thing than you would out of it.
It's a tough thing, and I have boxes of pickups at home here too.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I've heard many, many times is people go, God, I wish I'd gone to you first, because they wound up getting what they wanted.
Yeah.
More often than not, and they spent a lot of time dicking around with a...
There's definitely that. So let me ask you, you've designed and developed, how many pickups do you think you designed and developed in your career?
Too many to count. I mean, you know, you can see all the stuff on the website, and then there's stuff that you won't see on the website that we've made custom made for people.
Do you have any favorites?
Yeah, for Strats, the blackface set, I love those. The gold foils are really good. The El Rayos, really fine pickup. There's Jazzmaster, the wonderful sound. So yeah, I have favorites. Mostly, I'll play anything. P90s. I can't think of anything I don't like.
That's actually good reason to get up and go to work every morning.
Yeah.
Makes it nice. El Rayo is just as an aside, all the rage in New York City a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea, actually.
Yeah, I found that out. I was searching for a pickup for a guitar that we were putting together, and someone said, well, why don't you use the El Rayo? Because, blah, 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 blah. There's a couple of shops down, and, they really dig that pickup. Here's the one thing I will say about your pickups is they always deliver on what they say they're going to do. Now, whether or not that's going to work for you in that particular thing, but it's going to be what you say it's going to be. For a manufacturer to put out as much stuff as you put out, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's not worth making something that you can't pigeonhole what it's going to sound like. Yeah, another thing is I have one ear that's really sensitive to a particular frequency that people would call ice pick. So if there's any of that in it, I'll reject it, and I don't want the certain particularly high mid-range that.
Do you know what that frequency is?
I don't know what the frequency is.
Something like that in there?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, up in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, that's a good tip for people if they're getting that going on, then they buy a little graphic EQ and they can, or a little, something to just, knock that down a little bit. One more question about guitars and stuff, and then I was going to ask you about the future. String gauge. There's a lot of discussion on the internet about, well, if you play with 9s, those are wimpy. You play with 13s, you're a real man. And then, all this kind of stuff. I know the conversation is going to get back to your personal attack and all those kinds of things. But is there anything that you want to add to the conversation about string gauge, tone, and the way it interacts with pickups?
I used to play with 12 to 56.
Woo!
And I could break every string on the guitar in one swipe. Seriously, and I do it all.
That is serious.
It happened all the time, man. Just the bass on the guitar, it doesn't ring out. The string isn't vibrating in the same way as a smaller diameter string. I'm not, I don't really know exactly what's going on with that, but I actually feel that a little bit lighter gauge string in a bass gives you a fuller, smoother, more tone that you can articulate more.
Right.
Because you can hit the string hard enough that it really starts flapping, or you can lighten up on it. And when you do lighten up on it, it still has a little bit more of a amplitude than a heavier like a 56. So if you're playing light on a 56, it's not really moving the string at all. It's just barely moving. So you're not getting these overtones that you would get otherwise.
It's a lot of weight to deflect when you have a string that thick. What's interesting, I was going to say about Jeff Beck, I've seen interviews with him where he says the first thing he does when he walks on stage is roll all the bass off the amp. Now, we're not Charlie Hunters, but the way that most of us play, if you were to place the instrument in an orchestra, we don't want to be down with the basses. We don't want to interfere with the low tones of the piano. We don't want to take over the space that the violins are in, or any of the other things. Our competition is the mid-range of the piano and the saxophones, really.
Yeah, guitar wants to have some cut to it.
Yeah, the idea of this large bass. When I play these days, my single note playing is I'm trying to be a horn, basically. On the single note playing. And I don't play a lot of chord melody anymore, so I'm not too concerned about that. So I'm looking for a nice round mid-range tone that fits into the ensemble. I've had bass players say, not to me, thank God, but I've had bass players say to guitar players, hey man, you're walking all over my space. This has been great. What's on the horizon? What's the future looking like?
We're looking to continually develop new items. I'm not sure where we're at right now as far as releasing stuff, but we always have something in the pipeline. We're trying to keep ahead. There's a lot of guys making pickups anymore, so we try to release unique things that nobody else is doing, even if it's an old design.
Well, there are a lot of guys that make good pickups. I will say that, and there are a lot of people that make not so good pickups.
Right.
The beautiful part of what I think your company represents is you're able to make a good number of pickups, but still retain that. I used the word artisan earlier. Still retain that artisan. You're close to your players. I know that in the past when we've worked on developing product and all of that you were intimately involved with everything, and that's just a testament to your dedication, to your product and your industry.
Almost everybody that works here plays guitar.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Jason, for Jazz Guitar today, and I appreciate you coming on. Anything you want to leave us with before you go?
Thanks for having me. Anytime.
All right, man.